Welcome to another episode of the Assemble Performance Podcast. If you are watching on YouTube, you can see that I am at the house and I am in comfortable clothes. So I am switching up the days that I'm putting out podcasts since I am now uploading YouTube videos, YouTube vlogs again. So that meant I should have booked the podcast studio on the correct day. I did not. So here we are. And it is cold in my house because the AC is on kind of low. And so I am comfortable in my sweatshirt. Perks of having my own podcast. I can do what I want. Hopefully you're not turned away by this. Don't see why you would. But today I've got a Q&A episode for you. So I posted on my Instagram stories for a question box. I received some questions. So today I've got those questions on my phone, and we are going to go through those questions line by line. I haven't really looked at them other than to put them in the Google Doc for this. So this is going to be kind of a off the top of my head. How would I be responding to you if you asked me in person? It's how I like to do these episodes. It's how I think you get the most authentic answer versus me getting a real polished answer for you, doing a ton of research and all that stuff, right? Plus, it's just easier to record an episode this way. So without further ado, I am a little time limited, so I'm going to get into this because I have to go pick up my son from daycare after I'm done recording this, and that doesn't necessarily really have a time limit because we don't get him super late, but I digress. I still want to hang out with him and not leave him daycare. So to the questions, if you have a question, before I get into this, if you have a question and you'd like me to answer it on the episodes, you can email me, justin@assembleperformance.com. That's in the description. Or you can submit a question to the question box when I put it out, or to my email list when I put it out. Actually, I think most of these came from my email list, not from Instagram. So get on the email list. Links in the description. Also, links in the description for the YouTube page if you are listening somewhere and you do want to see the YouTube vlogs and things since I've started those back. So shameless plug there. All right, now we'll get into the questions. The first question says, until what level of progress in terms of strength, absolute numbers in squat, bench, and deadlift, and running, say half marathon timing, can one progress while training hybrid but one session a day? All right, so the question is, how long can you progress one session per day in hybrid? Like up to what strength and half marathon numbers? So you can get pretty far. This is really going to depend, honestly, on, and I'm going to try to not say it depends on all of these, right? Because I want to give you an answer. So I will give you an answer, but it depends on your own body and how long you have to train, right? If you have like 3 hours to train versus if you have 45 minutes to train for your single session, that's going to differ with how much you're going to be able to get done. But let's say 60 minutes a day. Strength numbers are going to be much less limited. So strength is much less time limited for you. So you can actually get up to pretty high strength numbers. I've set all my PRs on one session per day of strength. Well, not every day, right? Because some days I've just done endurance. Apologies if you can hear the jets as well. I'll try to edit that out, but I live near an airbase. So anyways, so back to the question. I have hit all of my strength PRs on 3 or 4 days of lifting per week, and the rest of the time being running, most commonly 3 days of lifting per week, and that's about 60 to 75 minutes. I don't do 2 days with clients normally. The only times I will is triathletes and some tactical athletes, but you can get very, very high strength numbers even just on one session a day. So for me, my current PRs are a 315-pound bench, a 405.6 squat, and a 517.5 deadlift. It was in kilos, but I think it's 0.5. And I did all that on like 3 to 4 strength sessions per week. So you can definitely get higher strength numbers. Now to the half marathon, if we're saying 60 minutes a day, you're going to be limited by your long run. But say that we have extra time for a long run. Again, you can get really, really fast with less sessions. Now running is more volume specific, but even not doing 2 days, like I've personally run pretty quickly, half marathon wise. I'm trying to think of my time. It was like I honestly can't remember. I'm sorry. I'm not going to try to remember. But you can get pretty quick. I wouldn't say there's an upper limit. It really depends on your speed, your genetics, things like that. So yeah, I'm going to kind of give you the it depends answer there because it will depend on like your natural predisposition to strength or speed. Somebody who's a good runner, I ran with a guy in high school who could run 15 something 5Ks, right? Like 15-minute 30, 15-minute 40-second 5Ks. He's going to get a lot faster on a half marathon on one session per day of hybrid training than I would, just because he's genetically more predispositioned to that. I am built more for strength, so I will have the opposite end of that spectrum, if that makes sense. All right, to the second question. Will minimizing lifting frequency and volume to compensate for volume in cardio impact strength gains? Good question. Good question. So the answer to this is yes, maybe, no. So if you don't do it correctly, yes, of course. And it also depends on your time horizon. So it will if your time horizon is short, right? So if you're saying, how does this change my strength in the next 8 weeks? More training is generally going to be better, right? Especially for like that, those short-term gains. For the longer-term gains, not so much. So you have to think about when you're making progress in strength only, you're able to put all of your focus on strength. You're able to fully recover outside of sessions, which means you're able to train harder, and you're able to do more sessions, right? So your progress is naturally going to be faster. If you add endurance into the mix and you're progressing both, you then progress both of them a little bit slower, right? But you're still able to make progress in both, assuming your program is set up correctly. What this means is that, yes, over like the 8 to 12 week time span, you'll probably make less strength gains than you would if you just trained strength. But over the longer term, then like say, I don't know, I'm not going to put numbers to these because I haven't done any studies on these, right? And there's not that many studies on this stuff, but over the long term, it's going to even out more so, unless you're like a professional lifter or whatever. But again, even the amount that it's going to differ is going to depend on your genetics. It's going to depend on the quality of your training program and coaching and the quality of your recovery outside of sessions, your stress management. There's a lot of other things that come into play when it comes to how hard are you able to train, how often you're able to train, and how much progress you're able to see. But very generally, hybrid will result in somewhat slower of a progress in strength and endurance since you're progressing two things at once. But again, if you really want to push strength, you could maintain endurance for a while, or vice versa. If you want to push endurance, you could just maintain strength for a while and then pick that back up when you've hit some kind of strength number. So there's a lot of freedom in hybrid training with how you want to set things up. I've worked with people to progress both at once. I've posted on my Instagram a few times about some of my marathon clients hitting back squat PRs right after their marathon, like 3 days after. So in that case, we really prioritize running, but strength was in the background building as well. I've had other people who have come to me and said, hey, I'm really happy with my strength. I want to work on my endurance, or vice versa. And we've done that with them. So it is possible to be pretty flexible when it comes to training as far as your goals and what you want to prioritize in certain seasons without losing in other areas. I'm going to have to watch how fast. I have 7 more questions, so I'm going to have to try to not be too long. This one says, I just found your page. Welcome. Can you explain why hybrid and Hyrox are so popular? Yes. So hybrid and Hyrox is really just a continuation, I think, of hybrid. Before hybrid, you had like CrossFit, right? You have all these trends of things of what's popular at the time, right? So you also had like P90X a long time ago, right? CrossFit was really popular for a while. Hybrid training kind of built on CrossFit with just like I don't want to say hybrid training is CrossFit. That's not what I meant, but hybrid training kind of was the next thing after CrossFit kind of had its societal up and down, right? But hybrid training is a lot more open. It's a lot more flexible. It's not just this one way to train. It's really, this is a really broad, if you're watching on YouTube, I've got my hands way out. This is a broad methodology of training, and you can do a lot within that. It's not very, very confined to like, you have to do this WOD or whatever. And I think it's become more popular because people have picked up on it. People have enjoyed it. People have done really big things like Ironmans and powerlifting meets and all this really cool stuff that honestly, I think really makes a difference in enjoyment, right? People see this and they say, I really want to live that full life. That looks so exciting. That looks so fun. And it really is awesome. And it's a really big confidence builder. And personally makes me feel really in line with humanity and nature and things like that when I am able to go do a cool, like a triathlon or a marathon or something on the trails, but then I'm still able to also come in and lift heavy weights and be around the meatheads, right? Like I enjoy both of those things. So I think that's really appealing to people. And then like some big influencers really picked it up and it's gotten popular on YouTube. Obviously, some of these hybrid things that you see people do, like Ironmans and powerlifting in the same day, those are really good. They perform pretty well on search engines like on YouTube and Google. So I think that's an addition to that. And then High Rocks was another build on that, right? So you've got all these people that are enjoying hybrid training, and High Rocks is saying, hey, why don't we combine the two in a fun environment that's small enough that you don't have to, for example, a triathlon. It's not very spectator friendly, right? Because you're going to be out for miles and miles and miles, potentially 112, right? But with High Rocks, it's in a smaller area, so it's spectator friendly. You get to see the people that have come to watch you every lap you run at the very least, and you get to do all this fun equipment. And so I think they're really popular just because it's fun. It's fun to do this stuff, and it's fun to have the freedom and flexibility to be capable to do a lot of different things. So that's my take, and I'm moving to the next question now. Can you still build muscle while training for a triathlon? Yes, you can. It's going to depend a lot on your nutrition. And also it's going to depend on your coaching, your coaching and quality of programming. I will say building muscle in hybrid training is harder than just getting stronger in hybrid training. They are separate things. The reason it's harder is just because there's a lot more calorie demands to endurance training, and putting on lean muscle is also very calorically demanding. So you have kind of competing priorities there calorically. And then you've also got some of the pathways with endurance and hypertrophy are opposite, for lack of a better term. They really are. There's things you can do to mitigate that. People do put on muscle while training for things like triathlons, but especially if it's a long course triathlon and you're not taking steroids, you have to obviously just keep it in context of, hey, this is going to be difficult. I'm not going to put on as much muscle as I would if I didn't do this triathlon and or if I was on steroids at the same time. Not recommending steroids at all, but it is something that you see all these super jacked people and they say they're natural. Are they? I don't know. Maybe some of them, right? But I will say putting on muscle during especially long distance endurance training, like half and full Ironman distance triathlons, is difficult. Possible, just difficult. All right. What signs do you look for that endurance work is impacting strength? For me, I'm looking at total top end numbers, right? So I will use a lot of relative perceived exertion and then back off sets. So for example, like we'll do a set of 3 at RPE 8 and then do 3 sets of 3 at 80% of that top set, right? So with RPE, I'm able to see how you're perceiving the effort. And if your numbers start to drop, that's obviously a cause for concern. What else would I look for that endurance is impacting strength? I would look for your reported mindset, your reported motivation to train, how sore you feel afterwards. But really, I'm looking at those numbers. Some really other good numbers that you can use is explosive power things. So like vertical jumps, broad jumps. These numbers are going to be the first impacted by under recovery. So if you can measure a broad jump or a vertical jump every, like say Monday or every Wednesday or maybe every Monday and Thursday, something like that, it can give you an idea of if this number is not changing too much, if it's within a certain standard of deviation, then you're probably good to train. If it drops off considerably, maybe we should start to take the session easier because your nervous system is pretty fatigued. So those are some numbers to look for, some things that I've applied with athletes, but I'm really looking at overall trends, and a lot of it is that relationship I build with the client to understand how they normally feel around training, and then also how are they feeling within this block of training. Are they less motivated than normal? Are they reporting more soreness? Are they reporting worse sleep? All these different things play a role. So again, it comes back to that coaching relationship, right? All right. Is it better to split your strength and endurance, AM and PM, or combine them into one, and how much does it matter? Again, I don't do 2-a-days with that many clients, but say I have a triathlete that I am doing 2-a-days with. I like to do strength in the morning and endurance in the afternoon or evening, mainly because I like to do strength as the first lift because it's the highest skill movement. So lifting under weight is the most CNS taxing, and it is also the higher skill movement. That said, I'm not a super stickler about it because as a hybrid athlete myself, I understand that a lot of times the weather is so much better in the morning for endurance training, especially here in the South. And so if you got to get your session in when it's cooler in the day, that's fine. But we have to understand that your lifts are going to be impacted later in the day because you are fatigued from the endurance training. Whereas vice versa, it's not as big of a deal. You will be impacted, but not as much because lifting is just such a high central nervous system demanding activity, and it requires a lot more skill to do correctly. So that is my answer there. 7, how do you prioritize training phases if you have a specific race or strength goal coming up but want to keep both qualities? So for this one, I really look at how can we make you very generally prepared. So I look at, we have strength and endurance, two knobs, right? Say you want to do actually, you know what? Say you come to me and you say, hey, I think I want to do an event. What was the question specifically? If you have a specific race or strength goal coming up. Okay. So say you do come to me and you have like a marathon coming up. I'm going to do some assessments with you, and part of that assessment is our onboarding call, and we're going to talk about what are your goals, how much strength do you want to keep, where your strength numbers at, do you think, and then endurance, like what are your goals with the marathon, where you're at currently, and then we'll do some assessments to actually get hard numbers of where your strength numbers are and your endurance numbers are, and then from there, I'll say, okay, let's do as much as we need to maintain the strength and reach whatever strength goals you have, but no more. And then let's prioritize this marathon if the marathon's a priority, right? And in this way, you really look at the minimum effective dose of training. A lot of this, honestly, I go more in depth on. I have a hybrid training guide you can download. I'll put that in the description as well. If you would like to download that, that lays it out pretty well. So I don't have to ramble on about that. So keep the minimum effective dose of like strength training and then push endurance, or vice versa, right? You can say you have a powerlifting meet, but you want to maintain your 5K. Yeah, you can do that as well. So I'll link that guide in the description. If you want to download that, definitely just click on that. It goes through all of these numbers, like the minimum effective dose, the maximum recoverable volume that you have, all these different things. All right, are there certain types of cardio, for example, tempo, runs, intervals, that are better if my primary goal is strength and muscle? So if your primary goal is strength and muscle, it's going to depend on what your endurance goal is. So do you have a certain cardio goal to keep a certain speed somewhere, or is it just general health? If general health, I'm not actually going to recommend running. I'll recommend biking. I'll recommend swimming, things that are not so recovery demanding. Running has a gravity component to it, and so that's going to require more recovery afterwards just due to the damage to the tissues than something like swimming, because there's no gravity, or cycling where you're not pounding on the ground. If you do have a running goal, I'm going to recommend more speed work. So short sprints up to 400s, 800s. I'm not going to recommend a lot of long, slow runs. I would get that same stimulus on a bike or swimming, like I said. So you will want to get that long stimulus. So the recommended activity guidelines is 150 minutes of steady state activity per week. I would want to get that somewhere cross training, a bike or swimming or rowing, something like that, and then really get a lot of the speed work and high quality sessions from running. That way you're able to focus on lifting as much as possible just from a recovery perspective. But again, if you have no goal, like no running goal, then I would recommend that you do all of your cardio as non-running cardio just from a recovery perspective. All right, last question. I am coming up on time too, so good timing. What metrics are worth tracking? I shouldn't have put this one in here because I have a whole podcast on that. So to add to the list of links for you to click, I will add that in the description if you want to know, because I did a very in-depth podcast on data, wearables, tracking, all that stuff. So I don't see a reason to repeat it for those of you who have listened to it. So if you're interested, I will link that in the description. That'll probably be the last link. I'll just link them in order of what I talked about. So just go down, click it, listen to that podcast episode. It was really good. I put a lot of effort into that and went in depth on what metrics I track, why I track them, and what metrics I don't really focus on for myself or as a coach. So with that said, that was all the questions. If you do have a question next time, definitely send me an email, join the email list so you can get that question box, or follow me on Instagram and keep an eye on my stories for that. With that said, I have to go pick my son up. So I hope you enjoyed this quick episode. We'll be back on the regular scheduled programming for podcasts moving forward, but they will be coming out on Thursdays now instead of Tuesdays, since my YouTube videos are coming out on Mondays. So yes, with that said, all the links for everything I talked about in the description. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you in next week's episode of the Assemble Performance Podcast.